It's funny how memories take on the quality of air, how even the most painful ones return without invitation, filling every crevice and lung, as suffocating as the heat of a Lisbon summer. I'd spent years learning to breathe despite them, to transmute shame into fuel, but as I approached the squat blue-tiled facade of the Igreja de Santa Maria again, my chest tightened with the old heaviness. I was 23 the last time I stood here head bowed, surrounded by the faces of the people who'd built me and that day unmade me piece by piece. I remember the echo of my own footsteps on the chipped stone floor, the doubting hush of Aunt Lucia's voice, the way my father looked, not angry, just tired, like he'd already given up and only now allowed himself to admit it. Mama had insisted on the meeting. "Let's have a talk all together, you'll understand," she said as she squeezed my shoulder, her rings biting my skin, her eyes holding the midpoint between hope and warning. Word had spread by then, just enough to become rumor, not enough to be interesting. My family feared embarrassment most, but they dressed it up in the language of concern, as if their skepticism could be a kindness. But when I walked into the hall, past the scuffed wooden doors and the faded posters announcing the next feast of São João, it was already clear I was to be a cautionary tale. The old plastic chairs squeaked under uncles who'd worked the shipyards or driven taxis all their lives, men whose knuckles spoke of honest labor and whose eyes glittered with used-up patience. The pastel candle smoke drifted behind them, the air a mixture of beeswax, sweat, and resentment. Father Miguel, in his pale collar and soft hands, beckoned me forward. "You're all here to support Joa," he said, voice gentle, but also to guide him. What followed was less an intervention than a slow unspooling of every doubt that had hovered over me since I'd first mouthed the words. Startup software subscription business. We'd met every Sunday, watched cousins become electricians, carpenters, nurses, the luckiest ones getting city jobs. I was the eldest of my generation, supposed to be first and best. Instead, I wanted to make an app. It was absurd heresy almost. Sylvia, my cousin, spoke first. She worked for the city council, her hair wound into a severe bun. "Joe, do you really think this is for us? These things, they happen in America. Here, people want to know who they're buying from." The stifled laughs were sharp, little bursts like the snap of twigs. An uncle, leaning back, clucked his tongue. "And computers. All day on computers like it's playtime." My father, quieter, cleared his throat. "I only want you to be safe, Mu Filho. When this doesn't work, what then?" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. And then Aunt Lucia, unyielding, "You're not above us, don't think you are, Joe. Running away to London, to wherever your silly dreams are. No one comes back from there." The silence afterwards was thick as blood. No one looked at me directly, but I saw my mother's hand find my wrist, uncertain and trembling. She squeezed, but even that was half-hearted. Worry for me, yes, but also for herself. I muttered some words, defiant, then pleading, then nothing at all. I wished, as I sat there in the middle of my family and neighbors, that I could disappear, dissolve into air like the incense around me. Afterwards, I packed 2 bags and boarded the night train to Porto, then a budget flight to London. My mother had cried softly at the station. She gave me a wrapped sandwich and a small, gold-painted medallion of Saint Anthony pressed into my palm. "For luck," she whispered, "come back when you're ready." I left Lisbon with a hunger, the grief of being rejected by those I loved feeding the clarity of knowing nothing was left for me here, not now. I spent those first months living rough, a slant-roofed room above a Pakistani grocer, sharing Wi-Fi with the neighbor's unprotected network, eating instant noodles in plastic bowls, reciting names and formulas in the darkness. I coded through the nights, fingers numb, eyes strained, building something, anything that felt true. The app, the company, grew out of the need for control, a simple SaaS platform for small businesses, a tool that let old-world shops digitize sales, inventory, and booking without learning a word of English. I worked meals around hackathons and had meetings in miserable coffee shops, pitching my little dream to everyone who'd listen. Most days, no one did. I failed honestly, then failed better. Investors shrugged. A few months later, I met Carla, a Portuguese designer with a wicked laugh and a sharper tongue. She mocked my wireframes, then sharpened them, making simplicity beautiful, breathing color and wit into the dull gray of code. We formed a team, me designing the architecture, Carla drawing users like flies to honey, Josef, our Slovakian CTO, stitching code at breakneck speeds. We fought sometimes over features, expansion, vision, but never over the core. Make it effortless, make it real. Wars were fought over decimal points in shared flats. We celebrated small victories, our first paying customer, our first Portuguese shop, an old pastelaria willing to try us out because Carla's uncle vouched for us. Then 5 shops, then 50. We learned to hold our breath as bank balances flirted with zero, charging just enough to make rent. When our first angel investor emailed, I stared at her offer until the sun rose, unsure if I was reading the number right. Success came in rumors. Our names appeared in small tech blogs, then bigger ones. Growth demanded fluency in things I'd never wanted, venture capital, term sheets, liquidity, but Carla and Josef made sure we never became what we despised. Every new customer felt like a proof of concept, each bakery, each bar, each mechanic's shop. 3 years on, we moved home, not quite back to Lisbon, but close, set up in a warehouse by the docks. Hired people I used to think of as out of reach, real engineers, real designers. Our logo started popping up in windows in Alfama, Ajuda, Bairro, Alto. People called it Joe software, and most days that knowledge made me happy. But I'd never gone back to Santa Maria, never called except the terse monthly transfer for my mother marked rent, but everyone knew what it was. Mention of family still fizzed with the old pain. When Carla suggested we host our next client celebration in Lisbon, after all, it's where it began, isn't it? I felt the ground tilt. The announcement went out. Demo day in a bright hall borrowed from the city, participants from all over Portugal. The night before, I walked the old Alfama streets, hearing fado music drift from open windows past the shadowed tiles where I'd hidden as a child. I passed the church, stopping beneath the flickering sodium lamps, staring up at the chipped Madonna, and wondered if anyone inside remembered. My mother called early next morning. She sounded distant, distracted. "Your cousin said there's some event." I swallowed, then nodded, though she couldn't see me. "You should come, you can bring whoever you like." The hall slowly filled, early clients, curious journalists, men in shiny shoes, a few shy students. Carla ran interference while I rehearsed my speech in a side room, hands shaking as if I were 23 again. When I emerged, I saw them gathering, my parents, Lucia with her severe handbag, 3 uncles deep in argument about parking, Sylvia trailing behind, lips pressed thin. Their faces were etched with cautious hope, painted for company. We took the stage, me, Carla beside me, Josef beaming. I demonstrated the product, my slides in clear, simple Portuguese, showing testimonials from mouldy bakeries and aging fado bars, demoing live bookings from a fishmonger down the street. The audience's faces flickered with understanding, the realization of what we'd built bit by bit, stone by stone, in the fashion of all things that endure. As the Q&A started, there was a hush from the back. My father stood, hair gone whiter, face unreadable. He cleared his throat. "Joe," he said, the name bright and public in his mouth. "We see your logo everywhere, yes, even at the Padaria on Rua de Sao Paulo. They say it helps. And here you show us how it works, but are you happy?" I nearly laughed or cried, hard to tell the difference. I told him yes, I was happy, not always, not perfectly, but proud, yes. I found my rhythm, the grief still there but lighter, transmuted. In that moment, as if on silent cue, Carla flicked to the last slide. Numbers, awards, clients, a short video of shopkeepers, some old, some young, naming our app like it was something as familiar as bread. There it was, concrete, real. 1,000 storefronts lit with our name, over 6 countries, revenues listed not as bravado but as simple proof. The applause began hesitant, then grew, then swelled, drowning out the self-doubt whose voice I had listened to for years. Later, after the doors had closed, after conversations and flashes of phone cameras, my mother found me by the side of the stage. She clutched my hands, her fingers cold but strong. "You did it, Joe. You did not have to prove anything, but I am glad you did." Lucia lingered, purse clutched. She met my eyes, her own harder, more brittle than I remembered, but she nodded once, reluctant, conceding nothing and everything. "Now cute ridiculo now," she murmured, low enough so only I could hear. "You made something good." We returned as a family to our old apartment, the rooms smaller and sadder than I recalled, the table heavy with fish stew and stories softened by time. I sat beside my father, who offered me a refill of wine, then paused, his eyes searching mine. "I was afraid," he said finally. "I thought you would be lost. I was wrong." I forgave him in the small silence that followed. I forgave all of them, and maybe, for a brief second, forgave myself for needing this day so much. We ate, we argued over politics and football, we remembered the names of cousins who had gone away and not come back. That night I walked past the church again. The doors were closed. I pressed a palm to the warm stone, letting the memories come and go, letting myself remember not just the shame but the clarity that followed, the certainty that something could be built from nothing but faith and code and sheer will. The pain of rejection had been real, sharp as any wound, but it brought me circuitously back to this city, to these people, to myself. As I walked down the sloping Ruhr, the river below me wide and shining, I felt, finally and fiercely, at home.